A very pleasant good morning, good afternoon, good evening, magandang umaga po, magandang tanghali, magandang hapon, at magandang gabi wherever you're located. Welcome to your hour, and this is Rita Gadi. Today we are so honored to have with us a thinker, an idealist, a patriot, one that will have us join how to save the nation, a good friend likewise. Sir Butch Valdez, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Rita, and I'm so glad to be in your program again.
Yes, we should do this really more often, but now we have barely, well, we're the 3rd of May, but before we go into our program, again, this is a special day for the other half of our country, or perhaps even half the world. Idil Fitr, Eid Mubarak. This is the end of the Ramadan season, and there is this great celebration they have. It's like a Merry Christmas, because the 40 days of fasting were really quite strict. But during that time, it was a period not only for meditation, but also for, well, asking forgiveness from one another, giving alms to those who need this, being friends with those enemies, etc. and all. I wish we had something as severely, religious as that. But anyway,
I was just thinking that exactly the same way you were saying that for us, I don't know what its equivalent is. Maybe Lent is our equivalent of that. But definitely we don't practice the kind of sincere devotion and discipline that is required during this period. And when you see the Muslims, most Muslims I know, they really practice it. Even the not eating, they wait until 6 o'clock in the evening.
Yes, when the sun sets.
Wow, I said, they. And
exactly. That's one of the 5 tenets of the Islam religion, and it really is observed very religiously, so that even those who are working will have to observe the certain hours that they go into fast, and that practically some could even go without water.
Yes,
water is allowed. Yes, and then of course, the other tenet, which we should have that too, is to pray 5 times a day. I mean, we pray when we need something, or when we have problems. But for them, it is, and when they pray, it is not asking for anything at all. It is really just exclaiming all the 99 virtues and names of God. So when they go into this, La ilaha illallah or something like this, it's really more of praising the Lord and the Master. Yes.
Wow. Yeah.
Many teachings in Islam really it has already evolved, but the tenets they observe this quite religiously, really. Like I've said, they have the 40 days of the Ramadan, which is really 40 days. In our case, you were mentioning Lent, Sir Butch, and that's only every Friday. And they've also canceled out fasting. And abstinence, and so you could eat anytime you want to eat meat, except on a Friday, whatever it is. Anyway, so it is that if the world is divided between Islam and Christianity, and we had the Crusades at one time, but what we really need at this stage is the spirituality of it all. So here we are, involved in a political exercise. Sir Butch, this is something new to me. I covered a presidential election way back in 1965, when you only had 2 political parties, Nacionalista and Liberal. Eventually, you had another third party with Raul Manglapos and PPP, Progressive Party of the Philippines, but it fizzled out. So there were only just 2 political parties, and you had the venues where they would have the rallies, but they didn't have this motorcades or whatever it is, and it was not really, counting how big your crowd was, but counting how many provinces or cities you have visited. But
Right.
that's why I was saying this is rather new to me, because it's a different complexion altogether. And you have surveys which give indicators that a candidate is now leading certain percentages, etc., and all that. But this has been focused only on the president and the vice president. We don't know what's happening to the senators. We don't know what's going to happen to the representatives in the lower and the upper chambers. So how do you see this now, Sir Butch? How do you sense this kind of a political exercise?
Well, for me to say that I'm very disappointed with us, the Filipino people, for being able to, for even putting up these types of candidates, is quite disappointing, because I am sure we have a lot more qualified and better people that should be challenging these participants for the leadership of our country. And I say this because all throughout this year, and even I suppose in the previous elections, but more so this year, when you have two main protagonists, do not bring out any real policy which is based on the principle that they are going to be advocating, and will be the basis for the future 6 years that they will be in power. None of them. One is advocating unity. Okay, unity is, well, that's what everybody wants, right? And no matter how sincere he is in wanting to have unity, I suppose it comes from, in my thinking, is it comes from his whole life, has been fraught with opposition, opposition being going against them, whether that was justified or not, but that was his whole life. So his dream in the future is there will be no such thing anymore, and that there will be no, and of course, it's understandable. That's what his main advocacy is. But it's, to me, not enough. The other one,
that's based on a very personal experience. It's not the nation, actually.
that's right.
We have always been fragmented. So it's
That's
his
it.
personal experience, maybe so.
The other one, I suppose, as well, her whole campaign is to demonize Marcos, demonizing first the son, because he is a son of what she considered a bad leader. And the whole propaganda machinery that was used, the rhetoric, and the inclusion of this weird, I don't know, the people who call themselves princes of the Catholic Church. They are not Christian at all, these bishops. They are not Christians. They're not Catholics, definitely. But once they, to me, whatever they're doing is even sacrilegious. But they will go on and doing this. So it's quite disappointing. So now everybody is, of course, excited to know what the results is for the coming elections. But I suppose everybody, too, will be apprehensive as to what is in store for us in the future. And my reading is there's not going to be much, and probably it will get worse. If it's pretty bad now, in all likelihood, it will be worse in the next coming years.
Oh dear. There are many of those who actually believe that, either which candidate would make it. As you said, the observation is what comes after, So it would be the end game for those who will lose, but it would be the starting line for those who would win, or it could be the other way around, It could also be the end game for those who will win, and it could be the starting line for those who would oppose those who won. So either which way, that is the way our system works now. And as you've said, and rightly so, it is a disappointment because we were not, yeah.
I just wanted to bring out the fact that there is no policy that is being mentioned or any real program. When you compare, let us say, if we go back in history a bit, during the time of President Garcia and Macapagal, when they were challenging each other for the presidency, it was very clear what one stood for and what the other stood for. President Garcia was for a Filipino first protectionist economy. No. Whereas Diosdado Macapagal was for a import liberalization economy. And those two went into the campaign, and of course the campaign was supported by as early as that time. We think the foreign agencies, foreign intelligence agencies, and Diosdado Macapagal won it. No? And of course, he bungled up the whole thing because of his policies. No? But what I'm trying to say is now there is no such contest, and you cannot see any marked difference in terms of philosophy, even ideology, on the people that are running for office. They make superficial motherhood statements, and the stupidity of all, I feel, is all of the people who had heard this thing coming from different candidates in previous presidential elections will still imbibe this and sing praises for it. It's so disappointing. But even after that, it's going back to what you had mentioned, whether it's the end game of one or beginning of another. I was trying to figure out what will happen if what's her name, Leni Robredo, so-called wins the election. I have heard certain elements, and they are very reliable sources of information, that the military, the armed forces of the Philippines, are ready to reject a Leni presidency. Whatever it is, you can call it, she got elected according to the Constitution, but the big sector of the military are ready to reject a Leni presidency. We must understand also that the presidency in the Philippines has never been more critical or crucial for the United States of America and the Western powers. With the kind of geopolitical issues going around now, where countries are now threatening to use nuclear weapons, and the aggressive posture that the Western powers are taking with regard to Eastern Europe and will do so here in Southeast Asia, it is very important for the Americans, the US State Department, to have a Filipino president that is under their thumb.
Exactly. Yes.
And much more important than in previous years. No? So I will not be surprised, no, if they are going to move heaven and hell to try to get their candidate to win. The candidate, the chosen one, who will follow exactly what they will want and what they will need.
Okay, I'll interrupt you for a minute,
Yeah.
Mr. Butch. There were three important elements that you brought out. Let's sort this out one by one because this is very critical as far as those listening to us and watching us today. First, you said that there will be a rejection from the military establishment because even at this early stage, there are already not just signs, but already you have the head of the Communist Party of the Philippines, Jose Maria Sison, announcing that he is supporting this candidate. Plus, the candidate also responded and said that she will make arrangements so that he can be able to be, to come home or whatever it is as far as his being prevented to return to the Philippines is concerned. So you see that what did not happen before, because already this man, Jose Maria Sison, is convicted and already in prison, and it was Mrs. Aquino who released him from prison, and that's why he's there in the Netherlands. And then you have the reincarnation now of the same policy, the same statement that Jose Maria Sison is also advising this candidate. So that's one. And that is exactly what happened during Mrs. Aquino's time, because not just Jose Maria Sison, but several others, Dante Buscaino, for instance, Commander Dante, was also released and given into the custody of the husband of the president at the time. So you could see that the military was agitated. And how many coups d'etats did we have during Mrs. Aquino's time? 8 of them, and serious ones at that. So why did they object to many of these pronouncements of Mrs. Aquino? Precisely what is happening now, that the military is ready to reject this candidate precisely because of the statement she has made, the collaboration that she has undertaken. And, I come from Mindanao, Sir Butch, and this is something which disturbs me, that she sits down with the MILF that was responsible for the massacre of the SAF 44, several violent incidents that happened in my island in Mindanao. So as far as I'm concerned, that is very risky. And it is understandable and logical and reasonable that the military not only is agitated because of such action. So that's the first element you brought out. We could go into the details of this. The second is that there is some support that will be coming from outside forces precisely because what is happening in the world. You have the threat of a nuclear war with Ukraine and Russia, with America pushing Ukraine, to fight against Russia in that particular stage. And now we have the situation in the South China Sea, where we have also America trying to push other countries. You have the AUKUS, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom joining together with Japan somewhere there to fight and to protect the South China Sea for themselves against China. So how geopolitical that is, you cannot overemphasize the fact that, as you said, they need a president who would follow exactly what they want, considering that we have 5 Philippine bases that are occupied by American troops here, whatever for. But if you read that EDCA, it's for what? Climate change, humanitarian reasons. That's a lot of that's hilarious. It sounds like Zelensky, what's his name, from Ukraine. Anyway, and the other element that you said, Sir Butch, is the fact that it seems that there is no intent really to consider the interest of the nation as it is. So 3 elements, and we could go further with that. And we just have to overemphasize the fact that these are the risks involved.
That's right. Well, you of course articulated it much better than I could, Rita. And this really should cause apprehension on the part of all of the citizenry. When we talk about those elements like Joma season and all that, why will the military go against Lenny? Because Lenny is involved with the left. And for the past 3.5 years, this present administration have set up a massive program to rid ourselves of the NPA and the Communist Party. And the one heading that was General Parlade, and he claims that we have actually wiped out at least 95% of the military capability of the Communist Party. Now, it will not be surprising, of course, if Lenny gets into power, that overnight, this whole leftist organization, which is considered as a national, what's this, terrorist organization, will start to make its presence felt, not just in the military aspect, but more in the government aspect. Because, as you rightly pointed out, Joma Sison claims to be the advisor of Leni Robredo and her campaign manager and spokesman. So it is something to be really scared about. On the other hand, of course, you've got President, if Bongbong makes it, I don't think he's going to have that unity call realized, because that whole group, the leftists and the yellow cards, will make it very difficult for Bongbong to govern from day one. And the chaos and no economic program can be implemented. And then probably a greater amount of anarchy in our country.
Sir Butch, that's the element which I failed to emphasize earlier when I was trying to summarize what you were saying, and that is that there are forces outside of our country, financial and otherwise, that will do everything they can, first, to make sure that Ferdinand Jr. will not make it. But should he make it, they will also do everything they can to make sure that he will not succeed as president. These forces are part of that group that runs both the economic, financial, and military life of the world, as aligned to the supposedly great power of the United States of America and the United Kingdom, whatever you could call that. You know, it was Donald Trump who called them as the deep state, or whatever else you could name them. But these are forces which would want to control countries, economies, the flow of money, and of course, most importantly, the flow of arms, which is the main livelihood of the strongest country in the world, as they say, militarily. And that is where it is so risky and so it's precarious. We are in that precarious situation. You mentioned that as one of the elements, and I failed to summarize it. But as you said, these are forces, and I think in many ways you've also mentioned the names of these people that are involved, because they are financing not just our country, which is now on the verge of a national and local election, but other countries likewise, so that they can be able to continue their intent to control, as I've said, the flow of money and, of course, the flow of arms. And we see this now quite obviously with what's happening in Ukraine and in Russia. And, You know,
That's right.
all the media propaganda against Russia is precisely, you know, a duplicate of the media propaganda that's happening here to us in our
Exactly.
country and in other countries. Look at Pakistan, early on also a victim of this.
Yep.
Because Pakistan, you now have the One Belt, One Road railway system of China crossing that country. So
Yeah.
you could see that here you have again the revival of what was then the Cold War. But this is even more dangerous because the Cold War was something which was subrosa. I mean, you know, it was just by agent espionage. This is an actual war that's happening.
This is an after every day there are overflights of China airplanes over Taiwan, and they're really paying a close look at the way Taiwan is because the U.S. intends to sneak in nuclear arms into Taiwan that will be pointed at China. No? In our country here, I don't think they have to sneak in anything because
It's open.
many of their warships are already docked in the Philippines. No? And these warships are ready to go in terms of a nuclear war, and that's only almost a stone's throw away from China. No? So this is the kind of situation we have. But I should also give special mention to the fact that our people will continue to have difficulties because they will not, the biggest financial burden from them, which is electricity and water, where there will be no relief as far as this is concerned. It will even increase by maybe 50% or even double probably by the end of the year. Why? Because the oligarchy, the 8 corporations that are in control of water and electricity in the Philippines are protecting their turf. And they're making sure that the president, whoever it is not going to destroy that control that they have on the Filipino people. And none of them, I would think, neither Lenny nor Bongbong are in a position to try to dismantle the hold of the oligarchic groups here in the Philippines. Now, that is another thing that we must consider because if your economic situation continues to deteriorate, I suppose there will be a point where the Filipinos can no longer take it and there will be unrest. And the social unrest that will follow will create the kind of chaos that maybe we have never seen before. Many are saying that with that instability, they would probably opt for the entry or the intervention of the military when this thing starts to be felt by Philippine society. I remember in the French Revolution, when it was so chaotic, nothing was moving and people were starting to get executed left and right. All of a sudden, the people opted for the entry of a fascist government, which was Emperor and Napoleon, who made himself emperor later on. I said that this is a possibility here in the Philippines at this point.
The sad part about this is while you and I in this program are concentrating in certain aspects which none of the candidates have touched upon, precisely because what they are busy with is the surveys that are coming out. And maybe let's touch on that just quite briefly before we go back to the important elements that involve the world. as far as
Yes.
we are concerned. So here we have surveys, and from the beginning of the campaign, you've had Junior leading the survey, and then you have in recent days you have the contender, Mrs. Robredo, also coming up with their version of a snowballing of the surveys likewise, and hopefully they hopefully would be not just overtaking the surveys of the junior of Ferdinand Marcos, but can these surveys be converted to votes? Sir
Uh,
Butch.
Well, we must first make sure that we're talking about the votes and not just the data that will be used by a smart map to declare who's the winner. There is a difference. No? Now, the surveys, which is being promoted, of course, by the mainstream media, already it is really setting the minds of the people as to who the protagonists are and how close the contest is going to be. That is the mindset. Whether or not these surveys are doing what is professional and realistic, to me is no longer the question, because the survey companies and the methods that they employ have all been, to me, have lost all their credibility, because these surveys are not controlled. There is no regulating agency for them, and they can use any kind of data and results of their data and use the media to promote it. What for? Because of their mind conditioning. So they place Lenny Robredo now very close to Bongbong Marcos, so that for us it is just these two, and whoever wins is going to be accepted. And that's exactly the way the foreign intelligence agencies work. That's exactly the way George Soros operates, using Smartmatic, and in the US using Dominion. The same mechanisms that are being used is now being used here in the Philippines. So what can we expect? Personally, I expect Lenny to be declared. But is that the 100% because the CIA chose her? Then it is not 100%, because I think Bongbong can still be chosen by the CIA. It all depends what they're ready to commit to the United States. But for all intents and purposes, my opinion is that the CIA will be going, and the Smartmatic will be going for Lenny Robredo, because they know that they will have her under their full control. And the Bongbong, they might have to, might be a risk
For them.
as far as they're concerned, because he can go either way.
So it would appear, if we're going to be simple about it, it would appear that the results of the elections are not the results that we are foreseeing as far as surveys are concerned, but the results will come out from those PICOS machines controlled by Smartmatic, controlled by Henry, what again is his name? Malloch.
Mark Malloch Brown.
Malloch, who was already part of the public relations firms of Mrs. Aquino, actually, and also being controlled by Soros. Who is this Soros? He has been mentioned so many times in several opinion writers, and the person who has, or his conglomerate movements all over the world seem to have control over media, over those in the arms race, and over people that he would want to put into office, moving around with other people in what has been called as a deep state in America or whatever. Who is this George Soros, Sir Butch? Just by way of making a review of this man.
Well, he is a he is many things, but for just to make it simple, he is by himself so rich, or in control of billions of funds to be used for investments or to be used for regime changes. George Soros has actually operated. George Soros is the #1 international advocate for drug legalization. He has put up many organizations that are espousing the repeal of all laws that are against the use of what we now call illegal drugs. And his idea is it will boost the world economy. George Soros is also for regime change and he works together with the CIA for those whose interests go against the deep state, the US and the UK. George Soros is a British citizen, but operating in the US. And his connection is the world financial oligarchy. That's why they use it. That's why he is also untouchable. The other things that George Soros is connected to, but indirectly or indirectly, is the International Criminal Court, the ICC, which supposedly is based in Switzerland, but it is funded by George Soros' money, organized by him. And they were able to bring international participation and membership to it. So it has that so-called credibility or ascendancy as a court. It is not a part of the United Nations, which some people think it is. But this International Criminal Court is another organization which he started moving to organize, not permanently, but as an organization, is the arbitration courts. The formation of arbitration courts, and that which we fell into in Hague is one of such organizations. And those operators are not. They cannot be said to be independent. Why? Because they're the ones that choose the judges. And then we pay for it. And then they have already set conclusion as to what this arbitration is going to be. China knows it very well.
That's why it didn't join. She didn't join.
Yeah, and Russia knows those things very well. That's why the US, UK, Germany, Russia, China, and I think even India are not part of all of these George Soros organizations.
So yeah. what we're seeing here, Sir Butch, is you have the movement of the financial oligarchs of the world that are operating not just here in our country, but also in other parts of the world to control their economies. And this is for the benefit or for the image, if there still is the image of the United States of America. And any threat to that particular image is something that they will have to work against.
Yeah.
With. So anyway, we see here now that movement as far as our elections are concerned.
Yeah.
Not just for this year, but we've seen it also in the past elections, except that sometimes, a maverick comes around like Duterte. And so
Yeah.
that was something they were not able to control early on. But the danger here, Sir Butch, is what you were emphasizing. It would appear like a revival of what it was immediately after the Second World War, when the world was divided between the alliance of those, the democratic countries with the United States of America, and then you have the communist countries that were aligned then at the time with the Soviet Union. Wala pa ang, although China was still having its cultural revolution at about that time. But now it seems that you have a revival of this division of not ideology now, but economic and military power in the
Right.
world. So as you mentioned, you have China rising in Asia as an economic power, and then you have Russia likewise. And then, of course, you mentioned India and what other countries, Brazil and whatever
Yeah.
coming up. And so this is where, countries will have to be controlled, leaders will have to be removed, and they will have to look for those that they can be able to control. And this is all either moving militarily or economically. And this is where we are in that precipitous, precarious situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope that whoever the leadership is going to be will somehow be endowed by some form of enlightenment, and then understand that the situation right now is for the Philippines is so untenable because of what is going on around us. No? But there is a silver lining with the kind of geopolitics conflicts that are going on. And I think as the threat for a nuclear war is starting to increase, and there are some people that are itching really to push the button, and yet there are still others that are trying to hold it back. The kind of sanctions that they have, America and the NATO, the economic sanctions that push Russia to do certain things, has in some respects, but in a very real way, is pointing the world to a different economic order, wherein Russia, the next step will be Russia and China will have to support each other, both militarily and economically, wherein the Russian ruble is now going to be accepted by, and it has been accepted by China, and vice versa.
Vice versa.
Russia had already announced, all of you people that want our oil must be in rubles, right? India is also going to be buying their oil in rubles. And so what you will have is probably now Russia, China, and India starting to coalesce in as far as a new economic order is concerned. Whatever parities they decide on in terms of how the relationship of their currencies will be, can be expanded to the rest of the world. And what happens then is the acceleration of the collapse of the US dollar. and the collapse of the whole of the financial oligarchy, and eventually, of course, the stoppage of the plans for one world government by the deep state. That is, if these three countries, and probably including Brazil or Japan or whoever else might want to join, no, will become the catalyst for the rest of the world to join in and move away from the this financial order which has been controlled by the financial oligarchy for the past 60, 70 years. No? So it will be a good thing, but what we're saying is, can it go to that, no, without a war? No. And that's really up to that.
It's a big if, actually.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do here, as far as our program is concerned, it could be the end game. It does not refer only to the candidates that will be losing. It also could be the end game of a lot of international policies and, of course, geopolitics. Or it could be the starting line, as Sir Butch was saying, of a new political and economic order.
Yeah.
So all of this should have been considered by the candidates themselves. We have not heard any one of them talk about this. Well, because as Sir Butch said, there are a lot of grandmother statements that have been repeated over time, and I think they feel safe to just mouth that in. So, but then you could see the differences here. Ferdinand Marcos Jr. feels that it is safe to just continue with his slogan, the unity of the country is important, so that we can be able to move on. So he is not going into other details and just having this general statement, gathering as many people as he could convince that if we are united, we can progress. But then you have the other candidate, and this is where we could see the tentacles of the hydra of the financial oligarchs that are moving in for other interests. And the only way that they can be able to come up with their own presentation of this is to destroy the image of the Ferdinand Marcos Jr., who is leading in the surveys. That is how our situation is right now. And that is the reason why we are bringing this up in this program, because this is the last time that we can be able to talk about this in about, now we are on the 3rd of May. So 4, 5, 6, and 7. You only have 4 days. It is not whether you should change your decision as who to vote for, but it is for you to understand what the elements are that will be coming up, either for the end game of those who will lose or the starting line for those who are going to win. So either which way, whoever it is you're going to support, that is the future that we should expect to encounter, because not all things are happening on the local level or on the domestic level, but forces, as Sir Butch said, elements outside are also para tayong puppets on a string, talagang pinaglalaroan. And until such time as we can really determine some kind of an independent and strong foreign policy, then we can be brave enough to challenge all of these things that are coming up. But Sir Butch, before we summarize all of this, the way you see the situation, you said something like Lenny could be declared as the winner in this election if the forces that are moving towards that end will be able to counteract the advancement of the surveys on Ferdinand Marcos Jr. But then again, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. could also be in some way having connections with the deep state or the CIA, and could also be supported by them. So either which way, bahala na yung mga gumagalaw na yan. It is us, the people, that will have to look at the consequences of this. And that's exactly what we're bringing out this afternoon. So we are not trying to change your choice or changing your decision, but presenting to you what are the situations outside of our country which are actually affecting the way the movements of our elections are going. So, Sir Butch, optimism or pessimism, how does it go?
Well, whatever happens, and I had mentioned that if somebody was chosen by the Smartmatic Comelec tandem and usurped the will of the people, the military, the armed forces of the Philippines seems to have made their voice felt around in different circles, that they will reject a Leni Robredo presidency. That's the way I understood it. If they do so, that means they are going to be doing something that is not in accordance with the Constitution. And that will mean a revolutionary government. Now, a revolutionary government is not necessarily bad. Depends on what that revolutionary government is going to do. And it is not, if the changes that our country needs so badly now to be able to survive and prosper and carve out a future for the coming generations. If the changes could be done in a condition of a revolutionary government, then I welcome a revolutionary government. But if this revolutionary government, as if it is going to be declared, will only perpetuate fascists, dictators, who themselves are dumb about what is going on in the country and outside the country, then the people will have to reject them. So that's my comment.
So that's where we could be, or that's where we're at. But there is one other element, Sir Butch, that we forgot to mention, and that is the men of the cloth. Yeah. And you were mentioning how whatever it is they're doing could be sacrilegious and blasphemous. But I had Kit Tata just a couple of weeks ago, who had the same, who felt the same way, that this men of the cloth should not be interfering or making such statements such as what they're doing right now.
Right now, yeah. I agree with him. That's yes. I've been very critical about this specific bishops like Sok Villegas, David, and Bacani, and all of them. Yeah. They behave not like priests. They behave worse than politicians. They are very narrow-minded. They forget the country and just come up with their own opinion and hiding behind the fact that they are also Filipinos, so they have a right to say. But the thing is, they use the pulpit in order to do it. They use the Holy Mass in order to do it. And all of these things is a desecration of our faith.
Well, Sir Butch, they're coming in too late, because in the roles as holy men, so to speak, as priests, as bishops, or whatever title they have in the Catholic Church, they should have been doing already this kind of work with the people and the leadership itself. That is, they should have started this with the care of the soul. First, of their congregation, second, of the community they serve, and third, of the leadership that is incumbent. So instead of crying out loud now against certain candidates and so forth, what did they do in the past so that we would not come into such a situation? Anyway, so we could discuss that for another full hour, but let's go to those who have joined us, just so as we can, let's try to find out, Sir Butch, some of those who have really joined in. I'd like to read some of their comments here. if you may yeah, okay. So we have somebody watching from General Santos, Vivian Mira Luman. Yes, thank you very much, Sir Butch. Bernard Sales Bonnet, have a blessed afternoon. So Shay Lastosa Venturina, I'll try to look for those who are actually giving some comments. So here we have, all of them are actually saying good afternoon to us and blessing us and listening from where they are, from Hong Kong, from Laguna, from Pasig, from the United Kingdom, from Switzerland. I think, Sir Butch, the International Court of Justice is in Strasbourg. Is it in France? And then
I think it's, I don't know where, I thought it was in Switzerland.
Yeah, I understand it's in Strasbourg anyway.
Strasbourg,
yeah. So we have, let's all pray for good elections, George Santos, and all of this are just saying good afternoon to us. So there are others also who are feeling that they're so concerned with Ferdinand Jr. and they're praying that nothing would happen to him and so forth. So, well, we'll look at the other comments as it is. So with this presentation that we had this afternoon, it is the end game, or perhaps it is the starting line. Either which way, it also affects every individual voter. And so I've said this so many times, we must begin always from the position of the individual voter, because that is what comprises our country. So you could see that the things we have discussed this afternoon are actually those that are happening outside, but will have a very great effect on what is happening here within our country. So Sir Butch, just some final words. 4 days to go, not just to convince people to look and be wise enough, but expectations perhaps.
Well, my only advice is let's all pray for our country, and like we never prayed before. No? Because what we're seeing in the future and what will come in the future, is something that I am certain will not make us, will not satisfy our dreams. We have to do something by ourselves, but prayers will do a lot. Will go a lot. Will go a long way.
Well, that is always what is most important in our lives. We forget that particular aspect where we put our hands together, not to clap for any candidate, but to put our hands together in prayer. And so as we close our program, we give this day and this season to you, O Lord. All the fruits of our labor, the labor of the candidates, the labor of those who joined the rallies, the labor of all of those involved in these elections. And we also offer to you the desires of the hearts of the Filipino people. In your hands, O Lord, we place all burdens, and we also place all our questions. And on your shoulders, likewise, we rest ourselves from all of this troublesome times. We pray for our loved ones, for everyone, for ourselves, for those who are not with us, whose absences actually are the presences we feel only in our hearts. And so, as Sir Butch has said, prayer is most important, if at all anything else could happen. And we, the Filipino people, should be, as Sir Butch would say, be together to save this nation. So I'd like to thank all of you for having joined us. Sir Butch, maraming salamat. We shall be together again, which will be after the elections, although the proclamation will be sometime by the end of June.
That's right.
So we have just about almost 2 months after. Marami pang mangyayari.
Marami pang pwede mangyayari.
Yeah, there will still be the counting, etc. Nako. So again, prayer is most important. So we'll be together next week, Sir Butch, when we have some, initial results. You know, when I used to cover elections, parang sinasabi, partial, unofficial. You know, parang sinasabi. Anyway, so thank you again, Sir Butch, for having joined us.
Thank you. Thank you for the privilege, Rita, and hope to see you again soon.
Yes, soon, yes. Maybe let's see how next week goes.
Okay.
And thank you to all of those who've joined us. Thank you for all the blessings that you give us and all the good wishes. So that is how it goes. This has been Rita Gadi, and this has been your hour.